What do you do when a billionaire publicly mocks you, daring you to play the piano, and the entire restaurant is watching? Emma, a young waitress with a worn uniform and tired eyes, felt the weight of their gaze as Philip Lancaster, the arrogant tycoon, challenged her. "Play something decent, and I'll tip you $100, he taunted, convinced she would fail. But as she approached the grand piano, something inside her ignited. What happened next would change everything. Stay tuned to witness the moment she transformed humiliation into a breathtaking performance that left everyone in shock. The air inside the upscale restaurant shimmered with an aura of quiet luxury as crystal glasses clinked and silverware scraped against porcelain. Soft jazz melodies whispered from hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere that was nothing short of perfect. Everything seemed flawless, except for Emma, the young waitress weaving between tables. Her uniform was slightly worn, and while she maintained a careful smile, her eyes revealed the fatigue of a long shift. For 6 hours, Emma had been on her feet, serving dishes she could never afford and smiling at patrons who often overlooked her. Among them was Philip Lancaster, the billionaire seated at table 7. Ruthless and arrogant, he didn't just own businesses. He wielded control over people. His presence filled the room with an unspoken authority, and tonight he was bored. Boredom and men like him often led to their own entertainment. As Emma approached his table to set down an expensive bottle of wine, Philip's voice sliced through the ambient chatter. "Tell me, waitress, do you play?" he asked, gesturing toward the glossy black grand piano in the corner, untouched and silent. A hush fell over the surrounding tables as Emma's throat tightened. Why was he asking this? Leaning back, Philip swirled his wine, his voice laced with dangerous amusement. "Surely you've had dreams, or have you spent your whole life just serving?" His words cut deep, and the weight of the restaurant's gaze pressed down on her, waiting to see if she would back down. Philip smirked, confident she would refuse. Then, loud enough for all to hear, he added, "I'll make it interesting. Play something decent, and I'll tip you $100. If you refuse," he shrugged, letting the implication hang in the air. Laughter rippled through his table, and it was clear this was no mere request. It was a dare, an elaborate trap. Emma's heart raced. She hadn't touched a piano in years, not since her mother's funeral, when the music had been buried alongside her dreams. Her fingers curled into fists. She could walk away, pretend she didn't care, but what would that mean? Let him win? Let them all think she was nothing? Something inside her snapped. She turned and walked, not away, but toward the piano. The polished black grand piano loomed ahead, its glossy surface reflecting the glow of the chandeliers above. Each step felt heavier than the last as she approached, aware of the eyes watching, waiting, judging. Behind her, Philip lounged in his chair, smirking, swirling his wine like a man who had already won. His colleagues exchanged amused glances, expecting a disaster. A girl too afraid, too weak, too unworthy to belong near such an instrument. Emma swallowed hard as she reached the piano. Her fingers trembled as they brushed against the keys, memories flooding back. It had been years since she last played. Years since her mother's voice encouraged her. Years since music had been her refuge. But life had buried those dreams beneath unpaid bills and endless shifts. A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "We're waiting," Philip said, bored and impatient, eager to see her fail. With a slow inhale, Emma shut out the noise, the stares, the crushing weight of expectation. She wasn't playing for them, not for Philip, not for the money. She was playing for herself. With one final breath, she pressed the first key. A single note rang out, clear and haunting, sending a shiver down her spine. Her fingers moved, hesitant at first, then faster and smoother, guided by a muscle memory she thought she had lost. The melody rose, soft at first, then swelling into something breathtaking. The once bustling room now fell into complete silence. Philip's smirk faded, and his colleagues, once amused, now sat frozen in their seats, their wine glasses untouched. Emma's hands danced across the keys, her body swaying slightly as the music took over. She wasn't just playing, She was feeling every note, pouring years of buried pain, hope, and longing into the melody. It wasn't just beautiful, it was soul-stirring. Somewhere in the crowd, a fork clattered against a plate, forgotten. A server paused mid-step, utterly transfixed. A couple engrossed in conversation stopped speaking, their eyes locked onto Emma as if they had never heard anything like this before. Philip's grip tightened around his glass. He had expected a joke, an awkward moment. Not this, never this. Emma closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. For the first time in years, she felt weightless, untouchable, powerful. The final note lingered in the stunned silence that followed. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Then someone gasped. It was followed by a single clap, then another, until the entire restaurant erupted into applause. Emma sat frozen at the piano, her fingers still resting on the keys, her chest rising and falling unevenly. Had that really just happened? She turned her head slightly, scanning the room. Disbelief and awe written on every face, from the servers lining the walls to the executive crowd at Philip Lancaster's table. Except for Philip. He had not moved. His fingers curled around his wine glass, his grip tense. His eyes, once filled with smug amusement, were now locked onto Emma, calculating and cold. She had ruined his game, stolen his moment of mockery, and turned it into something extraordinary. An older gentleman, the restaurant manager with sharp eyes and a tailored suit, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable, but his gaze lingered on Emma with something resembling admiration. "Miss, where did you learn to play like that?" he asked. Emma opened her mouth, but no words came. Where had she learned? From a mother who had once dreamed for her? From stolen moments at the community center before it closed down? From an old keyboard in her childhood bedroom, the one she had sold to keep the lights on? She had never taken lessons, never had the luxury of formal training, only love, only loss. Finally, Philip moved, setting his glass down with a deliberate clink. The room, still buzzing with excitement, quieted just enough for him to speak. "All right," he said, his voice smooth but edged with something sharp. "You played. I owe you a tip." A cruel smile curled on his lips as he reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet, and flicked a crisp $100 bill onto the piano. It landed in front of Emma, stark and insulting against the polished black surface. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room, but they died quickly. The energy had shifted. The admiration and respect Emma had just earned were now threatened by Philip's gesture. Someone upset by her abrupt departure. "I need a word," he said, his voice calm yet commanding. Emma hesitated, glancing back towards the restaurant. She should probably return, but the curiosity in his eyes drew her in. There was something different about this man, something that sparked her interest. "Let me introduce myself," he continued, offering a hand. "Richard Calloway." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She knew that name, the Richard Calloway, a world-renowned music producer, the man behind some of the biggest names in classical and modern piano. Her pulse quickened as she processed the gravity of the moment. "I was inside," Calloway said, his voice smooth and controlled. "I heard you play." He paused, studying her carefully. "You don't just play the piano, Miss Emma. You feel the music." Emma could hardly believe what she was hearing. This was real. Calloway's next words sent a shiver down her spine. "People spend years training to do what you just did in there, and yet you played as if you had been waiting your whole life for that moment." "I haven't played in years," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "That makes it even more remarkable," he replied. Just then, a sleek black town car glided to the curb, the driver stepping out to open the back door. Calloway reached into his pocket and handed Emma a business card. "My personal number," he said, his eyes glinting with something sharp. "Call me, unless you'd rather keep waiting tables." As he turned and stepped into the car, Emma stood frozen, the card burning in her fingertips. Her world had just shifted in an instant, and for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. The restaurant behind her faded into a distant memory, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses no longer mattering. This moment held her entire future. She traced the embossed lettering on the card, her heart pounding with the weight of possibility. But could she really do this? Did she deserve this chance? As she walked back to her tiny apartment, the familiar surroundings felt comforting yet suffocating. She had fought so hard to keep this place, yet now it felt like a cage. Inside, the cluttered space was cozy, a sanctuary that had always been hers. She sank onto the couch, pulling out the card once more. The name glowed under the dim light, and she reflected on the years spent believing her dreams were out of reach. Tonight had proven otherwise. She had talent, she had power, and now she had a choice. The phone sat on the coffee table, a simple device that held the key to her future. One call was all it would take. Emma's heart raced as she picked up the phone, her fingers hovering over the keypad. The doubts crept in again. What if she wasn't good enough? What if it was a cruel joke? But she had already been at the bottom. She had nothing left to lose. With a deep breath, she dialed the number. 1 ring, 2, 3. This is Richard. His voice came through, calm and controlled. Emma's throat went dry. What was she supposed to say? It's Emma from the restaurant, she managed to say, her heart pounding in her chest. There was a pause, then the faintest hint of amusement. That was fast. I was expecting you to take at least a few days. I don't want to wait any longer, she replied, determination replacing her initial fear. Another pause, then a chuckle, genuine, not mocking. Good, Calloway said. Meet me tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. sharp. Emma exhaled, her hands gripping the phone tightly. This was real. Where? She asked, excitement bubbling within her. A private studio, he replied, and within seconds the call ended. Emma set the phone down, her hands trembling with anticipation. Tomorrow her life was about to change, and this time she was ready. Emma stood outside the private studio, the morning sun spilling across the sleek, modern building with tinted glass windows. The air buzzed with anticipation as she took a deep breath, her heart racing. She had spent years dreaming of moments like this, but now that she was standing at the threshold, reality felt surreal. Dressed in a simple yet professional outfit, Emma wanted her music to speak for itself. She stepped inside. The receptionist greeted her with a polite nod, a subtle acknowledgement that she was no longer just a waitress, but someone important. Mr. Calloway is expecting you, the receptionist said, and Emma felt a thrill of excitement rush through her. A few minutes later, Emma found herself in a breathtaking studio, the walls adorned with platinum records, a testament to Richard Calloway's influence in the music industry. In the center of the room stood a grand piano, its polished surface gleaming under the soft lighting. It felt intimidating, yet inviting, a place where legends were made. Calloway was near the piano, speaking with another man, a well-dressed figure with sharp eyes. When he noticed Emma, he waved her over, a welcoming gesture that made her pulse quicken. You're early, Calloway said, a small smile playing on his lips. I didn't want to waste your time, Emma replied, trying to mask her nerves. Good, he said, gesturing toward the piano. Let's see if last night was just a fluke. Emma's stomach tightened at his words. This was the moment she had been waiting for, yet the pressure felt overwhelming. She walked over to the piano, running her fingers along the keys. The weight of history was palpable here. Countless artists had sat at this very bench, pouring their hearts into the music. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and began to play. The first note rang out, crisp and clear, sending a wave of calm through her. With each subsequent note, the world around her faded away. She was no longer in a studio with Richard Calloway watching her every move. She was home. The music poured out of her like a river breaking through a dam, filled with years of longing and lost dreams. As she played, she didn't just perform, she told a story. Each note carried the weight of her past, the struggles, the sacrifices, the moments of silence when she thought she would never play again. When the last note echoed through the room, Emma opened her eyes, breathless. Silence enveloped her, thick and heavy. She looked up to find Calloway and the other man staring at her, not with boredom or polite approval, but with shock. The other man, who Emma now realized was someone significant, turned to Calloway. She's the one, he said, his voice filled with astonishment. Calloway nodded, his expression unreadable, then clapped his hands together. Emma, he said, his voice measured, how would you feel about signing a contract today? Emma's breath caught in her throat. A contract? The weight of his words sank in, and her heart raced with a mix of disbelief and excitement. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was the opportunity. All those years of struggling, of believing she was merely a waitress, had led to this moment. She had talent, she had power, and now she was about to prove to the world that she was so much more than her circumstances. With her chin lifted, Emma met Calloway's gaze, her heart swelling with determination. Where do I sign? The atmosphere in the studio shifted, charged with an electric energy, as Emma and Richard Calloway moved forward to finalize the details. Emma's heart raced as she absorbed the moment, the realization that she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one that she had dreamed of for so long. Calloway led her to a polished table where a contract lay waiting, its crisp pages a symbol of everything she had fought for. He gestured for her to sit, and as she took a seat, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was it, the culmination of years of hard work and hidden dreams. Emma, Calloway began, his tone serious yet encouraging. You have something rare, something powerful. What you did last night was extraordinary, and I believe you can shape that talent into something the world will never forget. She could hardly process his words, her mind racing with possibilities. I just played what I felt, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And that's what makes you special, he replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. You didn't just play the notes. You conveyed emotions that resonated with everyone in that room. That's a gift. Emma smiled, feeling the warmth of validation envelop her. It was a feeling she had longed for, one that had been absent in her life for far too long. Let's go over the contract, Calloway said, sliding the document toward her. I want you to know what this means for you. As she scanned the pages, Emma's heart raced with every line. The terms were clear, and the opportunity was incredible. This contract would not only give her the chance to record her music, but also the potential to reach audiences far beyond her wildest dreams. Do you have any questions? Calloway asked, his gaze steady and attentive. Emma hesitated for a moment, then asked, What happens if I'm not good enough? His expression softened. You've already proven that you are more than good enough. The journey won't be easy, but I will be here to support you every step of the way. You'll have the chance to grow, to learn, and to create. Taking a deep breath, Emma felt the weight of her fears begin to lift. This was her chance to embrace her true self, to transform her passion into something meaningful. With renewed determination, she looked up at Calloway. I'm ready. Where do I sign? He nodded, a proud smile spreading across his face as he slid the contract toward her. Emma picked up the pen, her hand steady as she signed her name, a simple act that felt monumental. As she put down the pen, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. This was the beginning of a new journey, one filled with potential and promise. Emma could already envision the music she would create, the stories she would tell, and the impact she would have. Welcome aboard, Emma, Calloway said, extending his hand. She took it firmly, feeling a surge of excitement. Thank you for believing in me, she replied, her voice filled with gratitude. As she stood up, ready to embrace the future, Emma felt a wave of confidence wash over her. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an artist, ready to share her voice with the world. The studio, with its walls lined with the achievements of legends, now felt like a place where she, too, could carve out her own legacy. Sense of purpose, Emma stepped out of the studio, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The world was waiting, and she was ready to make her mark. In the days that followed, Emma immersed herself in the whirlwind of her new life. Each morning, she would wake up with a sense of purpose. The sunlight streaming through her window felt different now, as if it carried the promise of possibility. The world outside her tiny apartment was vibrant and alive, reflecting her own excitement. Emma spent hours at the studio with Richard Calloway, working diligently on her music. It was a creative explosion. She poured her heart into every note, weaving her experiences and emotions into melodies that resonated deeply. With each session, she felt herself transforming, The shy waitress who had once felt invisible was blossoming into a confident artist. Calloway guided her through the intricacies of songwriting, helping her discover her unique voice. He challenged her to dig deeper, to embrace vulnerability in her work. Music is about connection, he would say. The more genuine you are, the more it will resonate with others. Emma took those words to heart. She began to write songs that told her story, stories of struggle, hope, and resilience. One afternoon, as she sat at the grand piano in the studio, she crafted a piece that encapsulated her journey. The melody flowed effortlessly, each note echoing the pain of her past and the joy of her newfound freedom. As she played, tears streamed down her face, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of catharsis, of release. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, and then Calloway broke into applause. "That was incredible, Emma. You've captured something truly special." With each passing week, Emma grew more confident. She spent time in the studio with other musicians, collaborating and sharing ideas. The camaraderie fueled her creativity, and she found herself thriving in this supportive environment. But as her music began to take shape, so did the reality of her rising fame. News of her talent spread quickly, and soon she was being invited to perform at local venues, showcasing her songs to audiences eager to hear her story. The first time she stepped onto a stage, her heart raced. The bright lights and eager faces were intimidating, but she reminded herself of the journey that had brought her here. As she began to sing, the nerves melted away. The music enveloped her, and she felt an exhilarating connection with the crowd. They were hanging on her every word, their faces reflecting the emotion she poured into her performance. When she finished, the applause was deafening. Emma's heart swelled with pride. She had transformed from a waitress into a performer, commanding the stage with her passion. Yet, amid the excitement, she remained grounded. Emma often reflected on her humble beginnings, the struggles that had shaped her. She knew how easy it would be to lose herself in the whirlwind of fame. To keep herself centered, she made it a point to visit the community center where she had once played as a child. She volunteered, teaching music to kids who reminded her of herself, filled with dreams and potential. One evening, after a particularly successful show, Emma returned to her apartment, her heart still racing from the performance. As she sat on her couch, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. She had come so far from the uncertain waitress who had doubted herself. But with success came new challenges. The pressure to keep producing music weighed heavily on her. She often found herself questioning if she could maintain the momentum. What if the inspiration ran dry? What if she couldn't live up to the expectations of her fans? These doubts crept in during quiet moments, but she fought them back with determination. Knowing she had conquered challenges before, Emma began to write again. She channeled her fears into her music, creating songs that reflected her growth and resilience. Each melody became a testament to her journey, a reminder that she was capable of overcoming any obstacle. The release of her first album was a milestone she had dreamed of for years. As she held the physical copy in her hands, she felt a rush of emotions, pride, joy, and relief. This album was not just a collection of songs. It was a piece of her soul, a reflection of her story. On the day of the album launch, Emma stood backstage, heart pounding with anticipation. The venue was packed, and as she stepped into the spotlight, the cheers of the crowd washed over her like a warm embrace. She took a moment to soak it all in, realizing how far she had come. As she began to perform, every note resonated with the audience, and she felt an unbreakable bond with them. They were there not just to hear her music, but to share in her journey. When she finished her set, the applause was thunderous, echoing in her ears. Emma smiled, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. She had found her place in the world, and it was through her music that she would continue to inspire others. Emma knew this was just the beginning of her journey, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. With a heart full of hope and a spirit unyielding, she stepped into the future, excited for all the possibilities that awaited her.